The moment my front door camera buzzed, I knew something was wrong, because the box on my porch was gone again, and this time I decided I wouldn't let it slide. For weeks, packages had vanished like clockwork, always during the afternoon, always when I was at work. Complaints to the HOA went nowhere. Notes on doors were ignored. And the woman who ran our block meetings smiled sweetly every time I mentioned it. This isn't just about a stolen delivery. It's about how one entitled neighbor pushed me to plan the pettiest, most unforgettable trap of my life, and how the truth exploded in colors no one could wash away. I live in a quiet neighborhood where rules are laminated, lawns are measured, and the HOA president, Karen, treated authority like oxygen. She loved reminding everyone about trash cans, paint shades, and parking angles. She also loved standing near my porch during delivery hours, pretending to water flowers that were already drowning. At first, I doubted myself. Maybe the courier misdelivered. Maybe someone else grabbed the box by mistake. But patterns don't lie, and neither do timestamps. The thefts escalated. A book disappeared. Then electronics. Then a birthday gift meant for my niece. Each loss came with a polite email from Karen about community standards and personal responsibility. When I asked if she'd seen anything, she clutched her pearls and suggested installing cameras, as if I hadn't already. That night, I replayed footage and watched her step onto my porch, glance around, and lift the box like it belonged to her. Anger burned, but frustration sharpened it into focus. Calling the police felt excessive. The HOA protected its own. If I accused her outright, she'd deny everything and make my life miserable. So I decided on proof. Not hearsay. Not suspicion. Evidence that would announce itself the moment she touched it. I researched harmless dye packs, the kind banks use, bright, stubborn, and unforgettable. I modified a decoy package, sealed it carefully, and placed it where it always disappeared from. What she didn't realize was how carefully I planned every detail, from camera angles to timing, ensuring witnesses, recordings, and undeniable context, so when the truth surfaced, it wouldn't whisper or fade quietly, but roar through the neighborhood with clarity, consequences, and lasting embarrassment that everyone would remember forever. The next afternoon, my phone buzzed. The camera lit up. Karen approached, confident, rehearsed, smiling. She bent, grabbed the box, and that's when the world changed colors. The dye burst, blooming across her hands, blouse, and face, a screaming stain of truth. She froze, screamed, and ran. By evening, the neighborhood group chat exploded. Photos circulated. Denials collapsed. And the HOA president learned a lesson she could never scrub away. Within minutes of the dye detonating, Karen's performance shifted from confidence to chaos. She sprinted down the sidewalk, clutching the ruined box, pink streaks smeared across her blouse like fingerprints screaming guilt. I stayed inside, heart pounding, watching through the camera as neighbors peeked from curtains. Someone laughed. Someone filmed. Someone asked if she was okay. She shouted about vandalism and assault, words chosen to drown truth with volume. I didn't rush outside. Evidence works best when it breathes on its own. Instead, I saved the footage, backed it up twice, and opened the neighborhood group chat. Messages stacked like dominoes. Did anyone else see that? Why is Karen covered in dye? Was that from a package? The silence from Karen was loud. Minutes later, she posted a blurry photo of herself, claiming a prank targeted her while she was inspecting a suspicious delivery for community safety. That was her first mistake. I replied calmly, attaching a time-stamped clip showing her lifting the box from my porch, glancing around, and triggering the dye. No captions. No accusations. Just the truth playing in high definition. Reactions erupted. Shock turned into questions, then into anger. People shared their own missing deliveries. A pattern emerged, undeniable and damning. Karen tried to regain control by calling an emergency HOA meeting. She framed herself as a victim of harassment, warning about dangerous traps and hostile residents. But stains don't lie, and neither does footage. When the meeting started, she wore gloves and a scarf despite the heat, eyes darting. I asked for the floor and played the video again, this time on a big screen. Gasps filled the room. Someone whispered, "That's my porch too." The dye, designed to be harmless yet stubborn, had seeped into her nails and hairline. It marked time. Every gesture reminded everyone why it was there. When asked why she took the package, Karen claimed confusion, said she thought it was abandoned. The room murmured. I produced delivery confirmations, doorcam clips from other neighbors, and screenshots of her emails lecturing us about responsibility. The story collapsed. By the end, the board voted to suspend her pending investigation. She stormed out, leaving a trail of color and disbelief. Outside, people thanked me quietly. Others apologized for doubting. I didn't celebrate. I felt relief. Justice isn't loud because it's petty. It's loud because it's clear. Later that night, the stains still glowing under streetlights, I reflected on how entitlement survives only in shadows, and how sunlight, documentation, and patience dismantle it. The trap wasn't revenge, it was accountability packaged neatly, delivered publicly, and received by someone who mistook authority for immunity. Lessons lingered, shared reshaping expectations, boundaries, trust, and neighborly vigilance. The morning after the meeting, the neighborhood felt different, like a storm had passed and left the air sharp and honest. People waved who never had before. Packages appeared with handwritten notes offering to collect deliveries for one another. Trust, once thin, began knitting itself back together. Karen's house, however, stayed dark. Her car didn't move. The dye, impossible to ignore, had become a symbol everyone whispered about. I focused on organizing everything. Evidence doesn't protect itself. I compiled files, labeled clips, saved backups, and wrote a timeline. When the HOA's investigation committee reached out, I responded politely, attaching documentation without commentary. Facts don't need adjectives. Neighbors followed suit, submitting their own footage, missing item lists, and screenshots of Karen's condescending emails. A pattern hardened into something undeniable. Karen finally resurfaced with a lawyer's letter accusing me of endangerment and defamation. The irony was thick. My response was simple, a statement of events, the harmless nature of the dye, and proof of theft. The lawyer went quiet. Days passed. Then the committee announced a formal hearing. This time, it would include an independent mediator and, at Karen's request, local police observers. At the hearing, Karen looked smaller, the authority drained from her posture. The dye had faded but not vanished, a stubborn shadow around her cuticles. She spoke about stress, misunderstandings, and how leadership had made her a target. Then the mediator asked about the packages. Silence followed. One by one, neighbors spoke, not angrily, but clearly. Dates. Times. Losses. Receipts. The room leaned toward truth. When my turn came, I explained the trap plainly. I didn't gloat. I didn't insult. I described a problem, failed remedies, and a final step designed to identify, not harm. The mediator nodded. The police observers asked a few questions and found no fault. Karen's story unraveled thread by thread. The decision came swiftly. Removal from the HOA board. Restitution for stolen items. A public apology required in the group chat and at the next meeting. Gasps echoed. Karen stood, said nothing, and left. The door closed softly, final. Afterward, neighbors lingered, sharing relief. Accountability had returned, not through shouting, but through patience and preparation. I went home, collected a package safely waiting, and felt something settle. Boundaries had been redrawn, and the neighborhood learned that rules apply equally, especially to those who write them. The fallout didn't end with Karen's removal. Consequences ripple, and this one spread quietly through routines and expectations. The HOA scheduled a transition meeting, and suddenly the bylaws mattered to everyone. People who never read emails before showed up early, asked questions, volunteered. Authority shifted from one loud voice to many steady ones, and the neighborhood felt safer because of it. Karen attempted damage control online, posting vague messages about harassment and betrayal. They gained no traction. Screenshots outpaced spin. When her required apology appeared, carefully worded and obviously edited, reactions were restrained. No pile-on. No cruelty. Just acknowledgement and a collective decision to move forward. The die had done its job, the truth had spoken. I focused on normal life again. Deliveries arrived untouched. The door camera became background noise. Yet strangers stopped me to say thank you, to admit they'd lost packages too, to ask how to protect themselves without escalating conflict. I shared advice: document first, communicate clearly, exhaust formal channels, then act proportionally. Accountability isn't revenge, it's restoration. The board appointed an interim president and implemented new safeguards. A community locker for packages. Shared delivery alerts. Clear consequences for violations, applied consistently. Trust rebuilt not because everyone was perfect, but because systems were fair. Karen's absence underscored the lesson: power without transparency corrodes communities. Weeks later, a police report closed with no charges. The mediator issued a summary citing overwhelming evidence of theft and reasonable response. Karen sold her house soon after. On moving day, the street was quiet. No cheers. No cheers. Just a chapter ending. I watched from my porch as the moving truck pulled away, reflecting on how easily small abuses grow when ignored, and how courage, paired with preparation, can correct them without cruelty. The die wasn't about humiliation. It was about clarity. It forced a conversation everyone avoided and resolved it with facts. In the evenings, neighbors gathered again, not to gossip, but to share meals. Kids played safely. Packages waited patiently. The neighborhood remembered itself, stronger for having faced a hard truth together, and wiser about guarding fairness for everyone. I learned something personal too. Standing up doesn't always mean standing loudly. It can mean standing still while evidence speaks. It means resisting the urge to shame and choosing to illuminate. That restraint kept the focus where it belonged, on behavior and responsibility. When communities choose process over personalities, outcomes last. The experience reshaped how I engage, how I listen, and how I prepare. It reminded me that fairness is a habit, practiced daily, protected collectively, and renewed whenever someone decides enough is enough, calmly, carefully, and with receipts ready. Those lessons remain, guiding us forward, quietly reinforcing boundaries, respect, and shared responsibility long after the stains faded for good. Life settled into a rhythm that felt earned. With Karen gone, the neighborhood didn't magically become perfect, but it became honest. Small conflicts surfaced and were resolved without theatrics. The board published monthly reports. Meetings ended on time. Rules were clarified instead of weaponized. What surprised me most was how quickly people adapted when fear and favoritism disappeared. One afternoon, a new neighbor stopped me while I was checking the mail. He introduced himself, hesitated, then asked if I was the die trap guy. I laughed, nodded, and braced for judgment. Instead, he thanked me. He'd moved from a place where an HOA tyrant ruined holidays, fined kids for chalk drawings, and bullied renters into leaving. Seeing someone stop that, he said, made us feel safe choosing this street. That stuck with me. Safety isn't just locks and cameras. It's fairness you can predict. It's knowing rules won't bend based on who's enforcing them. The die trap story spread beyond our block, retold with exaggerations and lessons. I corrected myths when I could. No, I didn't booby trap my porch. No, I didn't want revenge. I wanted proof. The board invited me to help draft a package theft policy. I agreed on one condition: focus on prevention and process, not punishment. We added secure lockers, delivery windows, and a simple reporting flow. We emphasized mediation first. Clear escalation later. The policy passed unanimously. Months later, I received a message from Karen's former friend, apologizing for defending her. She admitted ignoring red flags because authority felt comforting. We talked briefly, kindly, and moved on. Closure doesn't require agreement, just acknowledgement. Sometimes I rewatch the footage, not out of spite, but as a reminder of restraint. The turning point wasn't the die. It was waiting, documenting, and letting truth carry the weight. That discipline prevented chaos and protected everyone involved, including me. On quiet evenings, when packages sit undisturbed and neighbors greet each other by name, I feel grateful the line was drawn thoughtfully. Communities are fragile. They fracture under ego and heal under accountability. The difference lies in how we respond when tested. The die eventually washed out of Karen's clothes, I'm sure. But the lesson didn't fade. It settled into bylaws, habits, and expectations. It taught us that power should be visible, answerable, and temporary. And it taught me that standing up can be calm, meticulous, and effective, leaving space for dignity even as it demands responsibility from those who forget. Time passed and the story settled into something quieter, but its impact kept surfacing in unexpected ways. The board asked me to join a small committee reviewing complaint procedures, and I agreed, wary of titles but committed to balance. We met weekly, listening to minor disputes, reminding ourselves that consistency, not control, prevents abuse. One evening, a resident brought up the die trap, asking whether it set a dangerous precedent. I answered honestly. Precedent, I said, is shaped by intent and restraint. Documentation came first. Communication failed. Authority refused accountability. Only then did a clear, harmless identifier become necessary. The room nodded, understanding the difference between escalation and exposure. As weeks turned into seasons, the neighborhood grew more resilient. New volunteers rotated roles. Power shared easily. When mistakes happened, apologies followed. That rhythm mattered. It taught children watching us that rules are agreements, not weapons, and leadership means service, not status. I received emails from outside the community, people dealing with similar situations. I responded carefully, urging patience, records, and proportion. I warned them not to chase humiliation, because it corrodes outcomes. Truth, presented plainly, holds longer. Privately, I checked my motives. It was easy to enjoy being right. Harder to remain fair. I reminded myself that the goal was safety, not applause. That discipline kept me grounded. Looking back, the die was a moment, not a mission. The real work came after, when systems replaced personalities. That shift endures, quietly protecting everyone, including those who never knew the risk existed. The lesson remains simple. Prepare carefully. Act minimally. Document everything. Let facts speak. And when accountability finally arrives, accept it without triumph, because justice works best when it restores trust, rather than satisfying anger. That understanding shaped me, reshaped our block, and offered a blueprint for confronting everyday power without losing humanity. Even now, when a delivery lands safely, I remember how fragile order can be. Vigilance doesn't mean suspicion. It means care. That balance, once learned, stays with you, guiding choices, tempering reactions, and reminding you that fairness is built daily, defended calmly, and preserved best by people willing to stand still while truth moves forward. Those extra moments of reflection matter, because stories like this are often simplified. They become jokes, clips, or headlines, stripped of context. I try to keep the nuance, remembering the nights of doubt, the careful pauses, and the responsibility that came with acting. Those details protect the lesson, ensuring it teaches courage without cruelty, firmness without ego, and resolve without regret. That is how a small street, a stolen package, and a burst of color quietly reshaped my understanding of community, responsibility, and the power of patient, principled action. Shared lessons that continue guiding us forward together without fear or favoritism again. The longer the story lived, the more it evolved into something larger than a single incident. What began as a stolen package became a reference point, a shared memory the neighborhood used to calibrate itself. Whenever a disagreement surfaced, someone would say, "Let's not make this another die situation," and everyone understood. It meant slow down, collect facts, stay fair. A year after everything happened, the HOA held elections. For the first time, there was real competition, not quiet appointments or pressure-filled volunteering. Candidates published statements. They debated openly. They answered uncomfortable questions. Voter turnout tripled. That shift mattered more than any single rule change, because it proved people believed their voices counted again. I declined running. My role, I realized, was never to lead, but to interrupt abuse long enough for healthier systems to take root. Leadership should rotate. Power should expire. Those principles felt non-negotiable now. One afternoon, a delivery driver knocked instead of dropping a package. He explained they'd flagged our street as high accountability. Fewer losses. Fewer complaints. Clear cameras and clear communication. I smiled, thanked him, and thought about how invisible good systems are when they work. No one notices until they're gone. Occasionally, I wondered about Karen. Not with bitterness, but curiosity. Did she understand what happened? Did she recognize the moment authority slipped into entitlement? I'll never know. Accountability doesn't guarantee reflection. It only creates the opportunity. What someone does with it is their choice. The group chat shifted tone completely. It became boring, and that was perfect. Lost pets. Block parties. Weather alerts. Boredom, I learned, is the sound of stability. Drama thrives where boundaries are weak. With them in place, life resumes its ordinary shape. I received one final message months later from someone new to the street. "Is it true about the die?" they asked. I replied simply, "It's true that fairness matters here." That felt like the right summary. Looking back, the hardest part wasn't setting the trap. It was resisting the urge to act sooner, louder, angrier. Waiting felt risky. Silence felt complicit. But preparation transformed risk into certainty. That patience protected me, protected the community, and ensured the outcome couldn't be twisted. Stories like this often get framed as revenge fantasies. Mine wasn't. It was a case study in proportion. Match response to harm. Escalate only when necessary. Preserve dignity even when confronting misconduct. Those choices determined everything that followed. The color faded from walls, clothes, and conversations, but the clarity stayed. It embedded itself in habits, expectations, and shared norms. And that, more than any viral moment, was the real victory, quiet, durable, and worth the wait. By the second year, the story had fully transformed from incident to infrastructure. New residents learned the rules not through warnings, but through examples. They saw neighbors help each other, board members explain decisions, and conflicts resolved before they hardened into resentment. The die trap existed now only as context, a reminder of why things worked the way they did. I noticed how language changed. People stopped saying the HOA says and started saying we agreed. That shift signaled ownership. It meant authority no longer hovered above us, it lived among us. When someone made a mistake, correction came with explanation, not intimidation. That tone mattered more than any bylaw. One night, a small dispute arose over a shared fence. In the past, it would have spiraled into threats and fines. Instead, both neighbors requested mediation. They met, listened, compromised, and fixed the problem together. No emails. No posturing. Just resolution. Watching that felt like proof that the hard moment we'd endured had paid dividends. Personally, I became more mindful of how easily people surrender power for convenience. It's comforting to let someone else decide, enforce, and dominate, until that authority turns inward. The experience taught me to stay engaged, even when things feel fine. Especially then. Complacency is fertile ground for misuse. I also learned restraint doesn't mean passivity. It means choosing the right moment, the right scale, and the right tools. Acting too soon would have invited denial. Acting too late would have normalized harm. Timing turned intent into outcome. Occasionally, friends would ask if I regretted anything. I thought about it honestly. I wished it hadn't been necessary. I wished communication had worked. But I didn't regret insisting on fairness when systems failed. That insistence protected more than packages. It protected trust. The neighborhood began hosting quarterly gatherings, not mandated, just enjoyed. Food, laughter, shared stories. Kids grew taller. Seasons passed. Stability returned. Those moments, ordinary and unremarkable, were the real reward. I realized then that accountability isn't about punishment. It's about alignment. When actions match values, communities thrive. When they don't, friction reveals the gap. Closing that gap requires courage, patience, and sometimes creativity, but always clarity. The die trap wasn't cleverness. It was clarity made visible. Once seen, it couldn't be unseen. And once truth stands in the open, it invites everyone to choose what kind of community they want to maintain. Ours chose transparency, balance, and shared responsibility, lessons we continue practicing quietly, long after the colors disappeared from memory. The story didn't end with applause or a dramatic final confrontation. It ended the way most meaningful changes do, quietly, when no one is watching. One afternoon, I came home to find 3 packages on my porch, untouched, neatly stacked. No camera alerts. No anxiety. Just normalcy. That moment felt like closure. Looking back, I understand why the incident resonated beyond our street. It wasn't about a thief getting caught. It was about a system correcting itself when someone finally refused to absorb unfairness silently. People recognized themselves in it, either as someone overlooked, someone complicit, or someone afraid to speak up. The die made the truth visible, but the response made it matter. I often think about how easily this could have gone wrong. If I'd acted out of rage, I would have lost credibility. If I'd gone public without proof, I would have been dismissed. If I'd backed down, the thefts would have continued. The balance between patience and action defined everything. That balance is fragile, but powerful. The neighborhood now runs smoothly without constant oversight. That's the highest compliment to any system. When rules fade into the background and people act fairly by default, governance has done its job. I take pride not in being remembered, but in being unnecessary. Occasionally, someone will still ask for the story, usually newcomers or curious friends. I tell it plainly, without embellishment. No heroes. No villains. Just choices and consequences. The die trap becomes a footnote, not the headline. The headline is what followed. If there's a lesson worth carrying forward, it's this: fairness doesn't demand loudness. It demands clarity. It demands preparation. And it demands the courage to act when silence becomes permission. Communities don't break all at once. They erode slowly, through tolerated misconduct. Repair works the same way, one principled decision at a time. I don't know where Karen is now. I hope she found perspective. But my concern was never her future. It was ours. And ours improved because we chose transparency over comfort, evidence over assumptions, and restraint over retaliation. Every time I sign for a delivery, chat with a neighbor, or attend a meeting where voices are equal, I see the invisible outcome of that choice. The color faded, but the standard remained. That's how accountability should work. Brief. Bright. Then replaced by something better. In the end, the package theft stopped being the story. The community became the story. And that's how I knew we'd done it right, when the problem disappeared, and what remained was simply a place that felt fair, calm, and genuinely shared again. This concludes the story. Let me know if you'd like any revisions, a different ending tone, or a shorter version for narration.